Well, hello everyone and welcome aboard. It's Rob from PMDG back with another DC-6 tutorial. This time we're going to be covering the descent. This is an area of flight that should seem pretty straightforward to most, but it's a little bit different when you do it in a DC-6. We'll demystify it for you, help you make it easy, ensure you succeed at it. So let's get started. So let's just deal with the elephant in the room right off the bat. Most simulator pilots jump right into a modern airliner with lateral nav, vertical nav, auto throttles, descent planning, and FMS, and all the other tools that make modern airliners just blindingly easy to fly. But most other types of airplanes don't have all these fancy tools, and that's when our modern simulator jet jockeys get themselves into trouble. So I'm here to keep you out of trouble. I'm going to give you a talk through here on how to plan out the descent in the Douglas DC-6. And with all the array of dials and knobs and switches and levers in this cockpit, you can be forgiven for being a little intimidated and thinking, wow, this is going to be difficult. It's not. This is actually really easy, and I'm going to walk you through that right now. Now, to start with, let's just set the base parameters. We're in cruise flight. The automated flight engineer is managing cruise power for us. We're going to let him continue to do that, and we're at 19,000 feet. And we've already got a GPS fix in for the Simuattack NDB, which is about 45 miles south of our destination on the southwest coast of Greenland. We're a little bit more than 100 miles from the Simuattack NDB right now, and we're trying to figure out when are we going to start our descent. Okay, here's the whiteboard. Gentle reminder that you're not allowed to make fun of my artwork. I'm a pilot, not an artist. Okay, here's our DC-6. It actually looks like a DC-6. Not really. All right. This is our descent profile. We're going to come down from cruise, and we're going to level out at 3,000 feet. And I promise, there's a little bit of math here, but this is going to be easy. If I can do it, you can do it. All right. We're at 19,000 feet at the top, 3,000 feet at the bottom. A DC-6 in the descent does it only one way. And get this into your descent program, you'll succeed all the time. Here's your descent plan. You're going to enter the descent profile at cruise power. You're going to leave them right where they are. You're just going to come downhill at 1,000 feet a minute, and that means you're going to cross the ground at 300 knots. Now, okay, stop. This is important, so let me rephrase this. You're going to cross the ground at 300 knots of ground speed. So let me accent this. For those who haven't spent much time in aviation, there's one grounding principle, and that is that 60 knots equals 1 nautical mile per minute. Keep this in mind, because 300 knots is 5 nautical miles per minute. 300 divided by 60 equals 5. Pretty straightforward. All right. So a DC-6 in the descent, 1,000 feet a minute at 300 knots equals, you're going to do 5 nautical miles per 1,000 feet while you descend. 5 nautical miles per 1,000 feet while you descend. Doesn't get much easier than that. All right. So what does this mean for our descent profile here? I'm switching to purple just because we haven't used that color yet. All right, we're at 19,000 feet. We're going to go down to 3,000 feet. That means we're going to descend 16,000 feet. This is starting to sound like Khan Academy, but sorry, it's just a little bit of math, but it makes sense here. All right. Now, 16,000 feet at 1,000 feet per minute means we're going to be descending for 16 minutes. 16 minutes at 5 nautical miles per minute, we're going to cover 80 nautical miles during our descent. That's it. Really straightforward. So all you got to do is figure out how many feet are you going to descend, come down at 1,000 feet a minute, multiply that by 5. That's how many miles out you want to start down. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the descent initiated, and we do that by turning the altitude hold off on the gyro pilot. Then we use the glide wheel to just start rolling the nose down trim into it. And if you watch the vertical speed on the very left side of your screen there, you'll see that the vertical speed now is starting to increase. We're just going about it really gently. There's no need to shove the nose over. Negative G's is always a bad thing for the coffee service and back. Just a nice, gentle descent entry. And we just keep rolling the nose down trim in there until we get to about 1,000 feet per minute downhill. At this point, we're going to let the gyro pilot manage pitch, and it will keep it more or less at about 1,000 feet per minute rate of descent. At this point, the name of the game is just simply managing the descent. That's what we're going to be doing. So let's skip over some of the dull parts. I want to take you right to the key pieces that you need to know to do this well. So here we are, we're descending through 16,000 feet. You can see we've increased our airspeed a little bit because we're descending into denser air. What I recommend you do in order to manage the descent profile process and to kind of keep your head in the loop of checking to see if you're on profile or not, as you watch the altimeter, as the 10's hand reaches the bottom of the arc and crosses the 5, this is a good time to glance down at your vertical speed indicator and make sure you're still at 1,000 feet per minute coming down. If you're not, just reach down to the gyro pilot and use the glide and pitch wheel in order to adjust your rate of descent as you need it. Now, as you come through the even 1,000 feet, so you can see we're about to go through 15,000 feet, at this point what I like to do is look up at the GPS unit, look at our distance from the fix, and do a quick mental math calculation to make sure we're still on the profile. Now, remember our little Khan Academy segment there? It's pretty straightforward. 5 nautical miles per 1,000 feet. So we've descended 4,000 feet. We should have covered about 20 nautical miles. You can see right there, we're just past 60 miles, so we're right on the profile. Things are working out just fine. Okay, I've skipped us forward again. We're now descending through 13,000 feet. That means we've descended 6,000 feet. 6 times 5 miles per 1,000 feet means we should have covered about 30 miles. We have. We're on the profile. Things are going great. Now, it's worth mentioning here, if you're falling behind the profile, then maybe you need to descend a little faster because you've got a tailwind behind you, or if you're getting ahead of the profile, you might have a headwind in front of you, so you'll just want to pitch up a little bit. Those are little adjustments, you'll kind of get a feel for them the more you fly the airplane. Alright, let's switch topics and start talking about engines. You'll notice that we always put all the jet pilots up in the front of the classroom because this is the part they have the most difficult time understanding. In radial engine airplanes, you do not pull the power to idle. Repeat after me. Do not pull the power to idle. So why is that? Well, in a radial engine, you don't want to do that because when you do it, two things are going to happen. One, you're going to see a slight decrease in oil pressure on the inside of the engine. When that happens, the oil film that is providing a barrier between all the metal parts inside that engine is going to go away. Those metal parts are going to start to rub against one another. You're just going to have to trust me that that's really, really bad. All right. The second thing that's going to happen if you pull the power to idle is that instead of the propeller pulling the airplane through the airplane is going to be shoving the propeller into a wall of air and putting a whole lot of force on the front side of that propeller. When that happens, you're going to get just a tiny little bit of twisting motion and torque on the main bearing of the engine. Remember what I said about that oil film? Put a reduction in oil film and torque on the main bearing together, you're guaranteed that you're going to have metal on metal contact inside the interior of the engine. It might not sound like much, but it does matter. Eventually you'll get spalling on the metal. Eventually the spalling becomes wear. Eventually that wear turns into a failed main bearing, and when that happens, the entire interior of the engine fills up with metal parts, and I still carry a clear envelope full of them inside my wallet because it happened to me on my first flight in the DC-3. So don't abuse your engines, because we did model this type of damage for those who use realistic engine damage in the PMDG DC-6. For now, let's talk about reducing power. The automated flight engineer is managing power for us, so let's just stick with that approach to things. Reach over here, click on the descent button.
26 inches, please. Setting 26 inches.
You'll notice the flight engineer is now pulling the power back. He's setting 26 inches of manifold pressure and slowly reducing the RPMs in order to reduce the potential for front loading on the propellers, as we were talking about.
Altimeters and flight instruments cross-checked.
You'll notice that the airspeed is going to start to back off a little bit because we've reduced power. It makes sense.
Low. Low. Descent checks are complete.
With that, our descent check is complete. You're going to notice the airplane's going to slow from 300 knots to about 240 knots, but don't change anything about the way you do the mental math. The goal here is to keep things simple. It will really work to your advantage in the long run. Keep coming downhill at 1,000 feet a minute. Keep planning it as 5 miles per 1,000 feet. We're going to wind up hitting our fix probably about 4 miles early, which is just great. It gives us an opportunity to get leveled off smoothly and begin to start planning the next phase of the flight. Jumping us ahead, we're now approaching 5,000 feet. This is 2,000 feet from our level off. 2 times 5. We expect to be about 10 miles from the Simuattack NDB. If you look here, we're 11.9 miles from Simuattack. We're crossing the ground at 4 miles a minute. And that's going to put us level at 3,000 feet with just a couple miles to spare, which is exactly what we want. Skipping ahead now, we've just descended through 4,000 feet. And what I want to direct your attention to is that the speed is starting to fall off a little bit. And we're running over the ground at about 240 knots. Everything is pretty much as we planned it from all the way back there 80 miles ago. Now you'll notice we're still running at 26 inches of manifold pressure. The automatic flight engineer has kept it there for us. That's his job. Keep that until you're ready to start configuring the airplane to land. Alright, so now you'll notice I'm just moving the glide wheel back a little bit here. You can see on the left side of your screen that the vertical speed is starting to decrease. Again, this is a very gentle exercise. If you can do this without anyone in the back of the airplane noticing it, you're doing it right. There's no reason to pin the flight attendants to the floor. There's no reason for the passengers to have to do G crunches to stay conscious. Just make it nice, gentle, and slow. So we got about 20 feet to go here. Still rolling that wheel back, and alright, now I can turn it over to the gyro pilot's altitude hold, pop that on there. Now let's come up here and take a look at the GPS and see how we did. We're 2.5 miles from our fix. We're 220 knots. We nailed it. This is exactly how the profile should be flown. And, well, look at that. Alright, so the GPS has picked up on the change of course and it's rolled the airplane right into it for us. We look like professionals, and after all, that's really what we're after. So the profile, again, just to review. Come over your top of descent, pitch the airplane over, leave it in cruise power, descend at 1,000 feet per minute. You'll get about 300 knots, which is 5 miles a minute going over the ground. Use that to plan your descent profile. It'll all work out like gold. Okay, I think that's about enough for today. Thanks for flying PMDG. Fly safely, be well, look after one another. We'll see you real soon.